Welcome to our Spotlight, GDTA Spotlight session. My name is Uli Weinberg, and for those of you who are here first time, I'm directing the School of Design Thinking in Potsdam in Germany. I'm also, I was also the starting president, or I am the starting president of the Global Design Thinking Alliance, the GDTA, which is in conjunction with the HPI since several months. Actually, during the pandemic past year, we're doing this spotlight session once a month to invite one person or few people who are heavily involved in design thinking all around the planet to talk about their most interesting issues they're dealing with right now. And I'm very happy that we have now today Maria Stashenko as a guest. And Maria Stashenko, she is directing the Design Thinking Center in Moscow. And actually, Maria, it's 10 years now that we met first time. It was 2011. I just checked in the calendar, I couldn't believe it. 2011 that I was there. Actually, also Larry Leifer, Bernie Roth. Larry Leifer was also there 10 years ago. And that was a very small nutshell of design thinking. And Maria was driving it already at that time. And so I'm really happy that you are not only became a member of the Global Design Thinking Alliance recently with your institute, and not only driving the city of Moscow towards center or city as a service, which you are doing through the last 3 years, but that you're actually joining us here and sharing at the GDTA Spotlight about your experiences through the pandemic and why and how you are helping companies, organizations to more than survive through the pandemic, through the severe issues. Actually, we are facing very bad numbers right now in Germany. I hope it is not the case in Moscow. I hope you're doing better than last time when we met. Last time you had the bad numbers, now we have the bad numbers again. And I'm hoping that that will not be increasing too much, but yeah, we'll see. We have a very special guest today. I would like to welcome Bernie Roth. Bernie Roth, you at Stanford University, Bernie Roth is actually the person who inspired a lot of people, but especially David Kelly, to start the D-School, and he is the academic director, Bernie. I'm really happy that you are joining today, but now give the stage to Maria Stashenko, and I'm looking forward to your talk. So the stage is yours. Please welcome Maria.
Thank you very much, Uli, for such a presentation. And I'm really thrilled to have a chance to give a talk at the face of Bernie Roth, because there is a related person and the figure in design thinking. And for me personally, with the books and everything that you have done. And I'm really honored to be at this stage right now. So thank you very much. And I hope to share some interesting insights really for everyone who is joining us today. Hello, everyone. Hello, GDTA, and hello, the Spotlight, those who see us out of the borders of the Alliance, and all the countries and all the people who are looking and seeing us. I will share my screen right now, and there will be a short video just to understand how Design Thinking Center in Moscow lives. We are working for 3 years already, since 2011. And there is a space for collaboration and creation. We created together with the Steelcase, the company who helped us together with Georgetta McAvey and the team of interior designers who were creating the D-School space at Stanford University. And we were really inspired to have a chance to work with them in 2017, 2018. There is a road behind it, as Uli already said, more than 10 years of design thinking development and my personal involvement, because I really love the tool and I still love it. I can't stop loving it because new borders and new opportunities are being opened up with this tool together with us. I'll stop the video to go forward. So design thinking in pandemic, when pandemic shot and shake to the world, we decided to give some notes, to do some notes during our working with other companies and with the projects which we have, and to make some notes to understand how the innovation pace and design thinking tool as a tool for innovation for companies and for organizations is pushing it forward or impacts somehow or changes. And I'll be happy to share some insights from our say ethnography. For nearly 2 years, we've completed online around 100 corporate projects with varied objectives, providing design thinking practices and tools. 70% among them are product and service acceleration programs, 20% are user experience research projects, and about 10% are online education in design thinking and customer experience. There are really varied projects which have their representation in Moscow and representative offices. There are global companies in variety industries. And at this slide, we can see how many projects we've done in each of the branch. And people involved. They were companies and industries who newly approached design thinking and who never collaborated with us. There were companies who worked and learned with us before, and we did with them deeper and faster projects. And there is some kind of a vibe which we caught that we less thought with them and less discussed with them varied things regarding the projects, and there was more doing than thinking in what we did. It's about shorter decision-making cycle and more practical tasks which we had. So design thinking is being applied here as an innovation methodology and a way of working in multidisciplinary teams. Why? To foster new products and service development process and to make it more client-centric. So how companies innovate in steps and terms? If this is all about innovation, we have to think about how much time do companies take to start and run their innovation circle? How fast do they approach innovation? How innovation happens within the companies? To represent it, we can take Roger Martin innovation funnel or the knowledge funnel in order to answer the question how companies innovate. And to think about how long does it take to go through the mystery stage when companies just approaching the innovation and asking the question, what can we do with design thinking? Or do we need design thinking as an innovation tool? How does it long take to go through a heuristic stage? Because this is, I think, most thrilling stage in an innovation process when you have to leave with the experiment and keep going it and go through the many mistakes and not being afraid of it. And for sure, how do you come to the algorithm and how many time does it take within companies to go through this stage? Step one is really step to the mystery, because companies have to embrace mystery and it may not even happen. Companies are coming to us, asking for experimentation thinking and then going back, because for them and for many, it's really a hard task to go into the mystery, to start experimenting with it. Step second, when you leave with it, it's about keeping experimenting and not being afraid. In our experience, it takes from 3 to 6 months when companies experiment with the tool in the learning and development units, in the labs, in the product development teams, to come to the algorithm. And this step really takes, or the transition from the heuristic to the algorithm really takes years, because you have to build model and process based on new things. Sometimes, or even often, not even sometimes, but often, the step 2 finishes without proceeding in the step 3, because companies drop down the experimentation and say, we don't need any further experimentation. It's really painful and it's really hard for us. We'd better keep on doing our business as usual as we did it before. So, how does innovation pace, if we are talking about the terms and time, changed in pandemic times? Did it become slower? Was it paused in companies, or did it become faster? To represent it, we took an adoption curve and will be using it as a model to show how companies and the types, the persona models of our corporate clients changed, and the number of them changed. We know that the adoption curve shows us an attitude of a person or a company, if we are talking about decision making, to innovation and to design thinking as well. There are innovators with design thinking. There are early adopters of the two. There are early majority and late majority in companies we face, and there are for sure laggards who come to the tool really late. We observe around 2,000 companies and we combine them into profiles according to the adoption curve, the diffusion of innovation model. So we know and understand who from our clients are innovators, who of them are early adopters, and who of them, for example, are late majority. Innovators are those who search for new tools and apply them immediately. Early adopters collaborate with design thinking inside companies, usually with SAP, IBM, MasterCard, or other companies who provide design thinking experience and expertise and push it forward. There are early majority companies which are looking for early adopters in their success stories to follow and apply design thinking as a tactical tool for learning and development, and do not have permanent innovation or design thinking team or lab inside. We regard late majority those who always ask for numbers to check effectiveness and then roll back because they understand that without numbers they will have a very high barrier in decision-making process to start experimenting with design thinking at a small scale or at a large scale. And we regard laggards as those companies who regard innovation as unnecessary or even harmful. And the same attitude they have to design thinking. They never approached us. Usually they also in pre-digital transformation period now, they do not approach design thinking when it's on a hype. And if something is new or something is really popular, they try to avoid it in their model. So when pandemic shot the world, and it was a long time and a number of lockdowns already, what happened with innovation behaviors and decision making in companies? What we've seen? We've seen that strategic planning was failed, and people with whom we conducted interviews, it's about 100 companies we worked with during the pandemic periods and conducted interviews with them. So the most frightening thing for them was that strategic planning failed, and we can't move further and rely on our previous expectations. There were no certain prognosis to follow. Operational model disruption due to lockdowns and necessity for people to work not in offices but online. For sure, legal landscape changes were really fast with opening of online trading and other legal restrictions being evaporated. So, and intense human resources shifts for sure, because people also are trying to find another place, and companies have to react to them. Taking these 5 factors on board, we understand that for those companies who relied on their conservative strategies and conservative tools and prognosis to follow up their future strategy, there is really a big issue. So they were just stopped in their way of decision making. What happened with innovators? What happened with early adopters? What happened with those whom we call laggards? What happened with them in this pandemic period? So innovators, what we've seen, they got green light for long-awaited initiatives. They were really, so to say, happy when something changed their model, when something stopped business as usual and gave them an opportunity to disrupt. They came with new ideas to their top managers. They envisioned new opportunities and they started experimenting with new business models. We had more talks and we had more projects with innovators. We've seen more innovators across our clients and across companies who were approaching us in Moscow. We've seen the rising number of early adopters, those who got an opportunity to practice design thinking on a wider scale within organization together with the pandemic and because of pandemic. We've seen that barriers to innovation and experiment lowered for them, and they got support from management for those things they wanted to implement. We've seen a rising number of early majority, those who turn to design thinking following up early adopters, because they see the articles, they read the articles, they see and visit online events where those who adopted design thinking or started to experiment with it try to share it for their new product or service development as a case. Early majority start spreading the word within the company because they felt more confident with it and scaled up design thinking initiatives to other functions. What happened with those whom we regard late majority? They got frustrated about disruption in traditional strategies. They got out of their comfort zone and business as usual. The impact of pandemic was mostly harmful for them, for their understanding, but two wow effects we might note here. They started looking for new things. Really, late majority was starting looking to new things. So their behavior and decision-making behavior changed. They became like more innovators. So this is why we've seen more innovators and early adopters among our clients, and design thinking as a way to start innovation for them. And the second wow effect, late majority behavior changed to early majority. About the laggards, they filled their vocabulary with new terms because they had no opportunity to rely upon old school tools they used before. They approached design thinking as a tool applied by many because it was really less harmful and less unsecure for them to follow some new tool if it's being practiced, and if situation is so unusual for them, it gave them an opportunity to show other behavioral and corporate behavioral models. And a wow factor for us, number of laggards really decreasing. So what happened? It was like a pandemic shift, which we can show at the adoption curve this way. Number of innovators raised, number of early adopters raised, number of early majority raised, and late majority and laggards were those whom we have seen in our among our clients in less numbers than we've seen it before pandemic. So after pandemic, we see such numbers. There were about 10% of innovators compared to the normal numbers, which we have talking with 2,000 and plus more companies with whom we do the client job, the client work. Instead of 13.5% of early adopters, we were talking and working with those whom we regard as early adopters, 20% of them. Early majority, 40% instead of 34. Late majority, 20% instead of 34. And with laggards, they were less than 10% of those whom we can regard as laggards or conservatively behaving companies in their attitude towards innovation. Compared with the normal adoption curve before pandemic, 16%. Innovators, with them, we were launching new products in pandemic. With early adopters, we started using new tools in design thinking. With early majority, we approached design thinking. We started to implement it, started to experiment with it. Late majority asked us for innovation at the end of pandemic, and we started the collaboration with them, not at the first stages of the pandemic period, but on the later stages. Laggards were asking us for replica, and finally they were all involved in design thinking as well, because step by step they understood that there is nothing to be afraid of. And a slide of a conclusion. What changed in pandemic? In pre-pandemic times, companies told us we need time to think, to start innovation. In pandemic, we need time to act. These two phrases were the difference like a border differentiating two periods. In pre-pandemic, companies thought over more, and in pandemic time, they were asking us to do something. It's like time to act. Barrier to innovation was really higher for early adopters and for those who were trying to evangelize design thinking in companies. And in pandemic, it became really lower. So top managers and people who were taking decisions were asking those who are regarded as innovators in companies, what can we do? What can we do something new? People inclusion was limited in pre-pandemic time and was really broader in pandemic because people working online, having families and other restrictions, for example, physical mobility, they got an opportunity to feel themselves as specialists and really full-scale professionals being involved in the digital process, working process in companies. Team efficiency was a little bit lower to my mind in pre-pandemic time because a lot of time was being spent on the long processes of collaboration in offline as well and talking and exchange besides the projects we've done. But in pandemic time, the decision making process and the collaboration process together with online and digital behaviors on board became really high. So team efficiency became really high and effectiveness as well. Empathy was practiced by few in pre-pandemic time, and in pandemic, even politicians practiced empathy. In our case, in my country, for example, the federal referendum due to constitution model was postponed in order to care for elderly people who can't come and vote personally. And it was some unprecedented shift and unprecedented step in our country and in such a scale. So really empathy is practiced in politicians. And it was a great example for companies and for company leaders to behave this way, to care more for people and thus to make more client-centric steps. Innovation was an option in pre-pandemic period, and in pandemic time, it became a necessity, even for laggards and for late majority, because the number of such companies really lowered. Everyone was scared about the period and was really frustrated by the time and was really trying to push forward and trying to make faster steps to do something new, to change something. So we go that way. We are happy really to share some insights from our research and from our design thinking practice in Moscow in our LinkedIn profile. We started it not so long, but a couple of posts are really waiting for you, and we'll be happy if Global Design Thinking Alliance members and those who see Spotlight right now will be joining us and share their insights as well. I'm off. And 30 minutes right now has been closed. Thank you very much, everyone who was listening. I'll be really happy to discuss some points and your observations during this period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Big thank you to you and applause. And also that you made it. Actually, we met a little bit before the session and you made it to reduce your slide deck incredibly to fully 30 minutes. I can't believe it. And I'm really impressed what you're doing through the pandemic. Now the floor is open, as I told in the chat already. So we usually schedule 1 hour with our guest speakers and schedule half of the time for the input from our guest speaker, in this case, Maria. And then we have the other half hour for Q&As, for your ideas, for your inputs. And I would like to ask you also to switch on your video to be present and visible here so we can look at each other. And yeah, you are putting off the slides. So I have actually a first question, because when the pandemic hit Germany, that was in March 2020, we had a shock moment at the D-School because we were so physical and we had to for a moment had to discuss also with the directors of the HPI in general if we stop working for one semester because physically it was not possible. And how did you do that? It seemed like you had a kind of seamless move into the pandemic without any harder transitions. Was that the case?
Thank you very much for asking, Uli. Yes, actually, there were about 2 to 3 weeks over silence, and we talked with companies, and everyone was waiting what will be going further, what is going on, and how politicians will behave, and how top managers will behave. And then they proceed, companies proceed, they are working on and asked us for online interaction for their teams. And they were projects which were really rolling out this time. And these projects even fostered during this period because top managers were asking about making something really quick wins to make out of the projects which were planned, for example, for a couple of months, and which we, if we go back to the knowledge funnel of Roger Martin to represent the innovation base, so more companies were really approaching the first mystery stage and compressing. We can see the effect of the compress as for the adoption curve and of the knowledge funnel, because we have to go move and faster and roll it out further. So it wasn't like a pause in our country from our side. It was mostly like a fostering period for companies and for the projects as well. Richard is raising hand.
Thanks, Maria. Fascinating. I found your study very, very interesting. That shift that you saw in sense of organizations, people seeing the value of innovation and the value of empathy, being maybe more human-centered. Do you think that's going to remain, or do you think over time that might shift back again how it was? I'm curious to sort of just culturally within Russia, whether there's a sort of push, but will it stay? Could it slide back? And if it does slide back, is there an opportunity for you to sort of try and keep it as an organization, keep it in its new state?
This is exactly the question I'm asking, and my team is also asking whether what will be the next steps of this model and of the ships. I think there will be a long tail after that, maybe in 2.5, taking the pace and the vibrance of the market development here in Russia. This is really locally and culturally. And it has the cultural specificity and state specificity. I think there will be a long tail around 2 years after it, when we'll feel and live this shift. So we're still within it, and many companies are really changing the way they make decisions and the innovation and how they start this way with design thinking for sure, and with client-centric innovations. I think we're now in the middle of the period of empathy as an imperative, because empathy is really an imperative, and many companies are talking about client-centric innovations and design thinking as a tool, because they have to be really close to the client to win the game. So and empathy, and even politicians showed this kind of an empathy. So we are living in a very amazing period, I think, when empathy is imperating how we behave and how we move forward. And even those who will not believe in empathy and client-centric innovations, they have to go that road. They're just changing their mind within it. But I think the adoption curve will shape the normal way when we'll adapt to it, for example, or we'll go out of the pandemic in 3 to 5 years, as experts say. Thank you, Richard, for your question.
Great question. More
questions, colleagues?
I have several questions actually, but I don't want to. If there's, yeah. So I was. If I look at what happened at the D-School in Potsdam, and it's really interesting to listen to you and to see that kind of movement. And also the Richard's question, I would put the same question up in Germany, because I see also the pressure was put on the companies, on the organizations to not see innovation as an option, but to see it as a necessity. Do you also have the feeling? So that my first question would be, when I was at your lab, that was not the Design Thinking Center yet, but it was already a lab. So there was no thinking of doing anything digital. There was no online path. Did you have an online activity already before the pandemic, so that you could easily transfer into a more or less online only activity? Or did you actually bring all the people in your lab, in the Design Thinking Center physically? So how did you handle that? That is my first question. The second is following.
Very practical. Thank you very much, Uli. We had some online experience before. So we had a team with the experience in online and streaming. And then within 1 month, we changed the curriculum and we changed the way of the activities we have. As soon as we already had projects with companies and organizations in social and startup as well, helping them to acquire design thinking on board, we were really easy with them to experimenting with online. And we moved forward with the tools we had. Miro is our partner, the Miro boards maybe, because Miro boards were created, it's a Russian startup once, and it was back in 2008, 2009, when together with the Miro founder, we created the idea of the digital stickers. It was at the British High School of Art and Design, and it was at the school of at the course of design thinking, one of the intensives we had, 1 week intensives. And the founder of the Miro was then my student among the students group, and we created this idea and he started to move it forward. He's not from Moscow, from Perm, one of the 1 million cities in Russia. And now, since that time, we are really great friends. And Miro, we contributed the Miro development. And then we had a great account and opportunity to change to it. And so it really helped us to move really forward.
Raluca is asking a question before I put my second. Raluca, you are still driving. I saw you in a vehicle. Raluca, it's your turn. Raluca? If not, Bernie.
Yeah. I'm wondering about personal effects. You talked about the effect within companies. I've been noticing that there are large changes the way people treat each other within the organization. I'm wondering if you found the same thing. Also, it's the shift you showed organizationally, but I think a big shift has occurred personally. On the other hand, there's also an extreme out at the bad end. So over at the good end, in terms of what I call a good end of collaboration and cooperation and support, there's much more of that than before, I think. But there's also a trailing end of nastiness that's stronger than before. So the curve is sort of flattened out in my experience. I'm wondering what you saw in Moscow.
Well, I totally agree, because it all starts from a personal attitude, and we are talking about corporate behavior. We have to firstly talk about top managers who are leading the corporations and who are giving the green light, lighting the green light and giving an opportunity. And for sure, companies who were trying to move into innovation and into design thinking, they suddenly felt the freedom and the opportunity to experiment with something new, because old ways didn't work for them and old strategies didn't work for them. And this is why we can talk not only about the personal attitude, like early innovators or laggards, but also about corporate behavior changes, because groups of people really within one company, within one corporation, a lot of people changed their behavior because they were striving to keep their pace, striving to keep their professional road moving forward, striving to to lose their job, for example, and then they were really pushed forward. I think it's like a positive shocking experience and pandemic for persons as well as for companies, as well as for teams. We can think maybe following your thought, Bernie, thank you for the question. We can think about in multidisciplinary teams being classified within adoption curve, and how many in varied departments there was a change, even in financial departments or in lawmaking departments. A lot of innovators raised their hands finally.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Really great.
I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yeah, Raluca, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Great. Sorry for the previous problem. My question is actually more of a test because my experience in the pandemic was quite the opposite, you know, from switching from online to face-to-face. So because the design thinking activities in the university in Sibiu are not part of the curriculum, and I was trying to get professors involved in design thinking activities, I had to, the only way they would participate in any more extra courses after a long period of teaching online was face-to-face. And what happened was one day before the activity, one of the teachers said she couldn't make it because although it was with masks and social distancing, she was afraid for her health. So I was so impressed that she wanted to participate in the first place in an activity organized by a PhD student that I spent about half a day trying to figure out how I could transmit what we were doing physically in the room the next day to her, because she was willing to participate somehow online to be a part of the workshop, but she couldn't be in the room. And I'm curious if you have any experience with hybrid events, because from that half-day experiment that I was doing, I realized I tested 2 webcams, the webcams of the laptops. I tried, you know, the time was really short, so I didn't have a lot of resources available. And I was sitting in this room in the university that's quite nice, quite new, with TV screens, with radio station, microphone, and I was feeling so hopeless because nothing worked to transmit what we were doing there to that person being online. And the best solution I could find in such short notice was my mobile phone, which seemed to have the best camera and the best microphone. So I'm curious what your experience is.
Any life hacks? Thank you, Raluca, for asking, and the great story that you told. Actually, we experimented with hybrid events when in parallel online and offline session is going on, and we got all the problems and barriers which you described right now, and we understood that it's not a good way to hold mutually in parallel online and offline sessions, and we mix together right now a fully online session when everyone who is online presents online and being online, and then we have a mixture of online plus offline sessions when people, for example, are meeting for a couple of hours or a day if we have some long-term collaboration within the project. And it's not a lockdown when people are being allowed to work personally and they have an opportunity. This really works better. So we call hybrid models that kind of models of collaboration. But in parallel, it's really, I think it really demands a lot of technical equipment and preparation and lots of resources being put. But following your thought and thinking about my experience, what happened happened with online collaboration projects, working with briefs and team working experience was in terms of a time and efficiency and effectiveness became really faster, because it's in a minute you have to be at a Zoom meeting, and you have strictly, for example, 45 or 1 hour time when you have to come up with results. So teams are really working much more intensively in online formats, and with great results. We've seen with really fruitful decisions coming within and through this team meetings and through the design thinking sessions in a shorter time. I regard that pre-pandemic, when we've been offline, it took a lot of much more time for coming to the decision than in pandemic, when we have a really very precise time limits and time borders in online, and the time is really compressed. We are working very, very hard. It's really not comfortable maybe for everyone in an emotional sense, because people would like to have some breaks and would like to see each other. There are people who are really feeling much more stressed in online format than they have and when online experience and online design thinking session coming in. But in terms of efficiency and effectiveness as well, online sessions are really, really much more efficient.
Building on this, before we head to Sebastian, building on this, actually a question, because we are in that phase right now at the D-School in Potsdam, also moving towards what is coming after the pandemic, and also taking the learnings out of the pure digital version we were now running since 3 semesters. So is there, if you would describe the time before and your vision for the time after the pandemic, if there is a time, I think we have to live for the next years with this kind of virus. But how would you imagine that and describe that?
Great question, Uli. Thank you very much. We were discussing it with some of our organizations and the teams who are approaching us and with whom we work right now. And we've seen that some digital habits which we've got on board through the pandemic period and through the lockdowns are really a handful and effective tools to collaborate. Before pandemic, each meeting in pre-sale, for example, when we just started to work with companies, or before starting working with them, we had to be at the meeting personally. And many people, representatives with whom we work, they are really struggling of a lot of personal meetings they had before the pandemic, and they have to be personally solving really tactical questions, which was an exhausting experience for everyone. 7 and plus more meetings within one business day, meetings back to back, is really, really hard. It's also a tough experience. Great to be offline, but it's really hard. And now a lot of meetings are being held online, and tactical questions are being solved really fast, as we see now, and our colleagues in companies also note this. So I hope that such a digital behavior to regard online meeting as a normal format, because before the pandemic it wasn't normal. You have to be offline to have a normal business meeting. So now normal business meetings are being held online, and it really saves time and emotional experience of all who are being involved. And I think it's a sign of an empathy. Empathy as an imperative of corporate behavior and the personal behavior and the business behavior as well, which we now see. And I hope we'll save it for further time. This is just one observation from us, which really helped to improve and make it revitalizing experience for those who work in an organizational model.
Yeah, thanks. I had a very interesting experience today because we had a physical meeting with our directors, with Christoph Meinl, Bernie Roth, you know him quite well, and Joanne as well, and Richard. And so we had a physical meeting, and then I was moving back to my office. And on the way, I met a person, Frank Pavlicek. Steffi, you know who that is, our head of the E-School. And we both had a tough time to think of, did we meet in person? So I know that person since more than a year now, and we could not think of that we met physically, but we were so familiar with each other. So just through that kind of meeting online quite often, so that I couldn't think of having him met physically, but he was there. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, he's half a head higher than I am. So I had no idea. But still, it was, for me, it was so interesting that there is a relationship to that person, not without having him met before physically. And that is completely, I think a year, 1.5 years ahead, I would have not imagined that that will happen at all. Sebastian, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Uli, and thank you, Maria. Maria, you showed a chart of projects done, the number of projects done grouped by sector, and as one could expect, IT and digital had the highest number of projects, and I guess that's a sector that has had fast innovation cycles and pressure already before the pandemic. But are there sectors that have not been that user-centered and innovative before, that have benefited most in terms of adopting innovation now in the pandemic?
Thank you, Sebastian, for your question. So we're talking about just a short question from my side. So we're talking about the companies who benefited most or who scaled up design thinking. What's the core of your question?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that scaling up design thinking means also benefiting. I guess it's a bit too early to say, we have now finished projects, but yeah, maybe there are sectors that have had hard times to innovate and are now, at least, let's say, trying to innovate, trying to be more user-centered.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'm just opening the right slide, which was that time in the presentation. Well, actually, we've completed more projects with more team involved in the company, around 200, for example, up to 200 people involved in companies. We kept collaborating with IT and digital, and they were in a bubble, the faster angle of the diagram. There were new branches who came to experiment with DT in pharmaceuticals and healthcare, because before that they were some kind of a late majority or even laggards in terms of design thinking. Those who represent pharmaceutical and healthcare companies here in Moscow, because it's a conservative branch and they are really caring about what they do, and they have long-term decision-making cycles and researching activities, including client-centric research initiatives. But that time, and we've done with them really 12 projects was done with pharma and healthcare. And also new branches came on board, like gas and oil companies. They wanted to innovate in terms of understanding their employees as an internal client, because they don't work for some external client, they work within the ecosystem and saving state interests. So gas and oil companies were facing their internal clients, their employees, and were trying to improve their experience. And they came to design thinking because they changed, because in a traditional branch like gas and oil, they have to be always offline, and they come to their work. They have very strict working schedules, and then everything changed. And they have no opportunity, no chance to rely upon their usual behavior. And we also started to work with insurance companies, because they had an opportunity to make and opened up, like, in terms of legal restrictions. They had an opportunity to experiment with digital on a wide scale. So they came to design thinking to find the tool to foster innovation and to use innovation opportunities which they have. We also made more projects with public services. And some hospitality projects came in because hospitality was one of the branches who faced the most harmful experience during the pandemic, because all the hotels and all the restaurants were closed and they had to innovate. They had to change really very, very fast to use new business models. And so hospitality and restaurant management came to us, and we even implemented the concept and the open course for those who wanted to work with us on how guest centricity. We were not talking about client centricity for them, but guest centricity. So I think they benefited more from design thinking, because in terms of hospitality industry, for example, they were talking about business model changes, and design thinking was not a cosmetic experience for them or some learning experiment for the team or inspirational experience. They were really asking for hard innovations in business models. So hospitality, I think, is the first place. And then it was really about pharma and healthcare. They benefited most from it. And also workers and employees in gas and oil and hard industries, which came to understand that they have to change their behavior towards employees. And also insurance, public services as well. So there are 5 industries which benefited more in pandemic, and they had a positive experience and in changes in their model with design thinking.
Thank you.
And how do you see, Sebastian, from your side, which industries benefited more from innovation in the period? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm working in IT, so obviously, I guess lots of digitalization projects just happened. So there were lots of demand just concerning IT. But just one thing to add, I guess, at least in Potsdam, we collaborated with pharma, for instance, very long already. So maybe it's also from country to country a bit different how innovative or conservative some sectors are.
Yes, thank you very much.
So we are close to our 4 o'clock here in Germany. So, but I would like to ask one last question, if there is no other. You were, if I remember right, your list of pre-pandemic and pandemic, there was one thing about empathy. There was one line about empathy. Empathy is practiced by a few, you were saying, in the pre-pandemic time, and by even politicians in the pandemic time. So, and I remember well our talk at the Global Design Thinking Alliance conference in September, where you were together with Yevgeny Kozlov, the person who you are consulting with at the city of Moscow. So one thing is, so what brought you to this kind of even politicians? And the other thing is, how is it going in the city of Moscow right now? So what is your next steps with design thinking together with Yevgeny?
Thank you very much, Uli, for your questions. It was when I was working over this slide, and I was thinking about the right phrase to use, what's happened with empathy. Then I understood that empathy is some cultural attitude which you practice when you see that others practice it, and if no one practices it and no one shows the great example, so those people who are a step high in the social ladder, so to say, like politicians and those who lead the political atmosphere, they're like key cultural stakeholders. We show the way we have to behave. And the one case I mentioned in my presentation, that the political referendum of the federal referendum was postponed during the pandemic period because older people are most active within electorate, and we have to care for the elderly people in order not to give them an opportunity to spread the corona further and to strive to get harm to harm themselves and within this period. So it was really a movement which was widely discussed in government and in public, and then it finally was made. Do we have to change the order and the strategy of the state, the planned dates for the referendum or no? Because this is such a great strategic plan which involves millions of citizens across the country. So, and it was really moved, it was really changed. A lot of resources being spent on that, and other political movements and cases within our country showed that the government really cares for people, and it showed other people on the lower steps of a social ladder, those who lead corporations, for example, or those who lead regions, the way to behave in an empathetic way. So empathy, if empathy is practiced by those who are regarded as those who create the cultural heart of our behavior, personal or corporate, is really a great case to show. If something changes in a governmental scale, in a social scale, the laws and the processes and the strategy, how the society works in a political sense, is really a way to follow. And it was an example to follow for other people and companies as well. And now with Moscow, the second question, with Moscow, we keep experimenting and make client-centric services for transportation and for inhabited as well. Moscow city as a place, as a really positive place for a family, for kids being raised in. It's not in terms of digital experience and digital development already. It's also about the positive experience we have. We have in education, we have in communication, we have in recreational zones, we have in Moscow, and in a strategy which we use to, for example, make development projects and investment projects which are being positively perceived and put in the city strategy. So there are lots of really shifts moving in within the pandemic. And for sure, it's about, Sebastian, thank you for digital stress. Is together with digital, where the shift in adoption curve was really most impactful and really fast. The compression of the time happened is really in digital, and digital impacted retail tools and technologies we use. Digital impacted the public services and the infrastructure we have to give and to provide public services, and for in other cases as well. Taken in terms of pharmaceutical and healthcare projects as well. Digital became the blood of the process.
Thank you very much. And also in general, thank you very much, Maria, for your very valuable insights and your openness also to talk about your experiences during the pandemic with the Institute and also with lots of companies, lots of people around you. Thank you very much, and a big applause from all of us. This is now coming to the official end. I would like to announce also our next spotlight session, which will happen on December the 14th. Our special guest there will be André Breskes. He is a professor at University of Cologne, and he is a part of the Europe's largest education program for teachers. And he is running the design thinking activities there, also part member of the GDTA. He became in the meantime, and he's going to talk about his experiences there at the university in the learning or teachers realm. And I'm looking forward to that. And Maria, if you have some minutes, we could now switch off the recording, and with all of you who still have some minutes of time, we could have a little fireside chat, a private one after the official GDTA spotlight session. So thank you very much for joining. And Steffi, thank you very much for organizing it again, and also the next one. And for those of you who have time, please stay in the call for another 5 to 10 minutes or so. Thanks.